this is Mame, and this is Independent Voice. Thank you so very much for joining us again. I have with me today Heidi Ganahl. Thank you so very much, Heidi, for joining me today to have a conversation, discussion. Feel free to be open and respond to the questions and add as you see fit. So with that said, I'm going to begin with my first question. Heidi, why are you running for governor? If elected, what will be your number one priority as a governor, and what steps would you take to achieve it?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored, and I'm excited to change things for the better in our state. We've got a lot of big issues we're facing, whether it's skyrocketing crime or way out of control inflation. It's far too expensive to live here. But most of all, I'm worried about our kids. Our kids are not doing well here in Colorado. The schools are not doing the job. 60% of our children cannot read, write, or do math at grade level. We have one of the highest suicide rates in the country for kids and drug addiction rates for kids as well. So number one, I've got to address what's happening with crime and make sure that we clean up our streets and get us feeling safe again. Number two, I need to fix the schools and make sure our kids are getting a good education. And I'll do that by giving parents choice. And number three, we've got to address the skyrocketing inflation here and make it affordable to live again. So I'm going to take Colorado to zero income tax to put more money back into your pocket. But I'm running because I love Colorado so much. I grew up down in Monument, a little town by the Air Force Academy. And I've been so blessed to be able to grow my business here. I started Camp Bow Wow, the franchise company for pets. And I also am married to a restaurant guy. He's a barbecue cook. And we have restaurants, and we have 4 beautiful kids, Jack and Jenna, who are 10, Holly, who's 13, and Tori, who's 27. So I want to make sure I make Colorado amazing again for them, so they'll stay here and live here, but for all our children.
You literally touched upon some of the questions that I might further ask you on. But with that said, you had mentioned several areas you would look at as a priority. Mm-hmm. So what do you see, though, as the major issue in terms of what you just listed out as a concern or areas of priority for you? Which one would you begin? How do you make that determination? Where would you start? And what would you say it really is the biggest issue for our state? I know you'd mentioned few, but what would be like the very first area you would try to tackle?
So the first thing I've got to do is address crime and drugs. Right now, we are second highest in increase in fentanyl deaths in the nation. Fentanyl is a huge issue in our community, and that's because they decriminalized it. They made it a misdemeanor in most cases, which makes it very hard for law enforcement to do their job. So number one, I've got to address crime and fentanyl. I'll do that by firing the leaders that are in charge right now and replacing them at the various departments and on the parole board. I'll make sure that law enforcement and public safety has the resources that they need to keep us safe. Right now, they don't. And we've got to roll back some of these laws so that criminals stay in jail and they aren't terrorizing our streets and shutting down our businesses and making it impossible to walk at night and keep our businesses open and keep our kids safe. So public safety, crime, and drugs are my first priority.
Fentanyl has become the number one destroyer of our youth because we see the impact, and we're trying to do the best that we can to figure out why our community is targeted, because it seems as though the number is pretty high in terms of how fentanyl is impacting the youth. So thank you so much for speaking to that. Now, I'm going to go back to also one area that you had mentioned, which is the school system, right? So in Colorado, our kiddos are not, 60% of our students are not reading at grade level. And you've said that it is one of your priorities to try and tackle. Mm-hmm. What is the plan? I mean, what would you do to change that?
Well, and even more tragic is that 95% of African-American and Hispanic kids in Denver cannot read. That is terrible. That is tragic. We are not doing the job we need to do to help our kids have a bright future. So what I would like to do is go all in on school choice and make sure that parents have the ability to move their kids to a different school if they need to, and that the funding, the actual dollars, are available to the parents through education savings accounts. So if you have a child child that's not learning and you want to put them in another public school, a charter school, a private school, you want to homeschool, micro school, whatever it is, you have the dollars to be able to do that and make sure that your kids get the education that they deserve.
Wow. Let me tell you, that has been something we've been pushing for so many years now. School choice. I know my children are not of a school age. They're in college, right? But then I know we have communities that have young kids coming up. The younger generation is now, stepping into the whole family world. And it means a lot. I know I've gone through the education system. I'm so grateful that I have had the opportunity to go to school, get education. I'm still going to school. Okay. We value education because we know that's the key to success. That's the key to becoming a productive citizen, right? That you contribute. But when the education system fails you, then it's kind of defeating the purpose. So it means a lot to us. So we're so grateful to hear you say that. Hopefully you get to do what you just explained, because without education, other situation also awaits our community. And so thank you for that plan, and more power to you. And I know you also had mentioned providing additional resources to our police force.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because that's another area that I would like to better understand in saying, so if they're not given the resources that they need, we can complain all we want. The outcome that we need and desire isn't going to be there. So what plans do you foresee that you'll be able to do to change that?
Well, the governor controls the budget. And so I will make sure that the money that we need to hire more law enforcement, to train them, to retain them, is there, that they need it. And also, if they need other resources to battle these issues that we're facing, that they have them. Right now, the current governor made us a sanctuary state. So what that means in reality is that ICE agents at the southern border of Colorado cannot coordinate with law enforcement to stop fentanyl from flowing into our state. And that's why it's so easy to get drugs and fentanyl in Colorado. And then we're not prosecuting the drug dealers because of the law that changed under the current governor that made it much more lax. It makes it easy to get out of jail, easy to stay out of jail, and easy to sell drugs to our kids and our communities. And the number of parents who have come up to me on the campaign trail that have lost their children to fentanyl poisoning is tragic. We've got to stop that. So we need to give police, law enforcement, public safety more funding. We need to make sure that they have a governor who will have their back and support them and help them recruit and retain, and make sure that they build strong relationships with the community too, because we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat right now. We're all experiencing high crime, high cost of living, our kids not learning. It doesn't matter who you are, if you're rich, you're poor, what neighborhood you live in. Everybody in Colorado is suffering right now. So we're all going to row the boat in the right direction and make sure we fix this problem.
Thank you, Heidi. You had mentioned something that is really near and dear to my heart. As a student of public administration, budget rings a bell for me. And I recently studied the entire budget process, all the way from the federal government through all the way down to the governor, and the devolution of that policy and how the budget is allocated. It's an interesting concept to understand. So you did say the governor controls the budget. Where do you think you will go first to make any kind of change in terms of allocating that budget?
Well, here's the thing. Our budget is out of control right now. Our state budget has doubled in the last decade, and we've added $2 billion in the last year alone. So it's almost $40 billion. Jared Polis, our current governor, has grown the size of government by almost 25% just in 3.5 years. He's added 4,000 full-time new employees. So the most important thing I can do as governor is undo a lot and undo the spending that's out of control. So that's why I've made a goal to go to zero income tax over 8 years. It's one of the key things we can do to make sure our economy is healthy and strong in the future. Tennessee just did that. They went from 6% state income tax to zero over 6 years, and they have one of the most thriving economies in the country now. So I put the plan on the website, but we're going to tighten our belt a bit. We're going to reduce the size of government back down to where it was before Jared Polis took office. We're going to reduce taxes and fees. make sure that the money we're spending is working on the things that are most important to people of Colorado, like we just talked about, public safety and education. And also, we are going to attract new business and industry here because we are going to zero income tax. That happens in every state, the other 9 states that have done that.
I can't wait to see the zero income tax situation happen for us as well as our children. It sounds pretty good to me. With that said, though, I'm going to divert to my questioning for a minute and ask you a related question. So when you speak of budget, you're thinking about obviously attracting new businesses. And one of the things in Colorado, at least, that I thought was going to supposedly bring some kind of revenue was legalizing marijuana. Mm-hmm. And the taxes from the marijuana are supposed to go into the school system and make our schools all better. Do you, in your opinion, think that has worked?
No, it hasn't worked at all. Evidenced by 60% of our kids can't read in Colorado. Very little of that money is going into schools. The rest of it's going into the general fund and being spent however the legislature wants and the governor wants. It's not being spent on our kids right now. And high potency marijuana is really, really affecting our children. Most of the kids who commit suicide in Colorado, or at least 50%, have marijuana in their system. So it's something we've got to tackle. I'm not saying we go back and, put the genie back in the bottle. I respect the will of the voters, but we've got to put a cap on potency. And Jared Polis was not willing to do that. So now our kids can get this access to this high potency stuff that really hurts them. So yeah, that's a huge blunder with the marijuana money, and the inability of the legislature and Jared Polis to put a cap on the potency is really hurting our kids.
I was once again in school working on my master's degree when marijuana was legalized here in Colorado, and fresh out of the press, we happened to be the ones to read the book, the regulations and all that good stuff. And it really sounded like, okay, so if, instead of putting all that much money into the pockets of, somebody else, why not sort of have a way to use it for something better? And it sounded like it's a whole lot of money if it really went back to something good, which is the education system, maybe paying the teachers slightly better, renovating the schools, augmenting the technology needs and all that good stuff. And several years later, I'm thinking, okay, did it really do what it set out to do? And it doesn't sound like, at least to the degree that we thought it was going to, did that, except it gave people reason to openly say what you're going to do about it. Yes, I do this. It just legalized it to me.
Teacher pay is really important. Right now, our classrooms in Colorado get an average of $250,000 in funding, and only $50,000 of that goes to the teachers. So we've got to make sure our teachers get better pay. And that will help with increasing reading scores, as well as making the class sizes smaller so they have fewer students that they have to teach. We've got a lot of issues right now.
We do, right? And I mean, in a way, they're interrelated, because we're talking about budget. We're talking about our kids, where we choose to spend the money, whichever way comes into that pot. How do we divvy up that pot into the different pots so that, and I don't mean pot, other thing, I mean the buckets where this money goes into. A while back, we were at some point discussing the possibilities of increasing charter schools, right? And we even talked about maybe helping our community to put a charter school that is maybe slightly focused on the needs of the immigrant community. And I know we cannot put a school and say, oh, this is only for the African, whatever, you can't do that. I understand, but there is a way of really also using it as a community center, a place where the community can really continue to educate the children about culture, language, history. It could have some level of focus. What is your take on that, and do you think it's possible?
Absolutely, it's possible, but it's getting harder and harder to open charter schools. I tried to open one a few years ago in Boulder Valley School District. We had 700 kids signed up, and this was right in Jared Polis's backyard. And he says he's charter friendly, and he wouldn't lift a finger to help us, and it got turned down. So we need to make it easier to open charter schools and give parents more power to drive their kids' education. So I think it's a wonderful idea and something we should absolutely push forward.
We are still interested in seeing something like that happen for our community. What is your stance on what is considered abusive and discredited practice of conversion therapy? Do you support that ban, or do you have any plan to do anything with that?
No, I have a lot of compassion and care and love for all children. And I think we've got to support parents and families in helping our kids navigate this really tough time right now. So I'm all about parents and families and trusting them to make good decisions for their kids, their health, their businesses, their life.
Because it gets to the younger generation really being absolutely confused as to which way to go, and creating that gap between children and parents. Parents are struggling to know where to draw the line. It feels like parents are losing the autonomy, the responsibility they have over their children, because certain things are being said and done. And out of fear, parents are not taking the steps that they need to take to protect our children, to raise their children in the manner that they see fit, because there is implications. If the child says this, that, or the other, the implication might be against the parents. So it is creating a division between children and parents, and the dynamic of the household is just different. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I absolutely hear that that's happening from parents and families. They're very worried, and a lot of secrets are being kept by the schools, and that's not okay. Parents come first. There was a transparency bill that went through the legislature last session, and it got turned down. The people of Colorado wanted transparency in curriculum, to know what was happening in the classrooms. They don't want secrets being kept from schools. And the legislature turned it down, and Jared Polis did not support it openly. So we've got to make sure that parents understand and are partners in education, not being left out of the conversation.
Because at the end of the day, the responsibility will come back to the parent.
Mm-hmm. And who knows best how to care for their children than parents? They are the ones who should be making decisions for their kids.
Right. I've heard somebody say, I send my children or my child to go to school so that they can learn math and English and science or whatever, and not anything else. The parenting should be left to me. And that resonated with me, because I remember when my kids were younger, I did feel like, yeah, the parenting is me, good, bad, or indifferent. You don't have a manual for raising a child, right? You do the best that you can to raise a child. But when the school or the system steps into that, it kind of mixes it up for a lot of parents, and it creates fear. That's my concern. It does create fear. You cannot speak to your child. You can't handle certain things because you just don't know what the system will do. That is a very odd and awkward place to be, I think, for a parent.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. As the mom of 4 kids ranging in age from 10 to 27, I think nothing is more important right now than keeping our family respected and safe and secure, and a priority in making decisions for our children.
So talk about immigration.
Yeah.
What plan do you have in terms of immigration policies and all things related to immigration?
Yeah, immigration is the key, the secret sauce to America, right? We're all immigrants at the end of the day, and we've got to make sure that we make it easy and, not too much red tape, make the path clear. And for those of here who have come to Colorado and our country and haven't gone through that process, let's get them through the process. Let's put them into the process so they can become legal immigrants. We do have the issue, though, of fentanyl and what's happening at the southern border of our country. So we've got to be conscientious about that. That's why I talked about sanctuary state status. There is a way to welcome and love and be compassionate and care for those who immigrate to our state, but still follow law and order and make sure that folks that are coming to our country with bad intentions aren't allowed to be here. We've got to figure out a way to connect those dots with work visas or other paths to make sure that people can work and stay and live here and raise a family. But yet it's a federal issue as well. So we've got to figure out how to work with the federal government on that as well.
Thank you. As an immigrant, we all are interested about how this whole immigration thing works. So we just try to understand what all it means, and it's good to hear you speak to that. So related to jobs and cost of living, related to everything we talked about, that happens to be interrelated, at least for me. What would you do to address the quality of jobs, wages, benefits, different things like that?
Yeah.
What vision do you have?
Well, the most important thing we can do is address inflation. We have the highest inflation rate in the country here in Colorado. It's 16% since Joe Biden took office. And that means it's unaffordable to buy gas and groceries and school supplies. So how do we address that? How do I do it as governor? I reduce the size of government, put more money back into the pockets of people of Colorado, get out of the way of small business owners. So I reduce the red tape there so that small business owners can thrive and pay their employees more and hire more people. Right now, people in Colorado, small business owners, do not feel confident. The CU Business School Index just came out last week, and only 40% feel positive about it. So that's the majority feel very pessimistic about our future here. And 27% more small businesses closed in the first half of this year than previous years. So that, from what I'm hearing from small business owners, is because there's too much red tape, there's too much regulation. They were mandated, quarantined, shut down far too long after we knew it was okay to open up again. So I will be a governor that will trust the business owners and trust the employers in our state to make good decisions for their staff, their employees, and their teams and themselves and their businesses. And that's how we're going to get back to a thriving economy. And that's how we're going to get to higher pay, better benefits, and more flourishing here in our state.
Just listening to you speak of that, we talk about small businesses, we talk about different areas. I think about the senior citizens through this inflation. I hear a lot of people talk about what it's like to go to the grocery store and just be shocked. Can you imagine what's happening to them? And do you have a plan, or what do you foresee ought to happen to really keep an eye on the need of our elders?
Boy, they're hurting right now. And a lot of folks, who are retired are having to move out of Colorado because it's so expensive. So something we can look at doing is capping property taxes so those don't keep going up. We can also address inflation again and do what we can to make sure that we try and drive inflation down and affordability, especially around housing. And groceries, that goes to a bigger issue around supply chains and making sure that our truckers have the fuel, cheap, efficient fuel, that they can get products and services here. We've got to put our energy industry back to work here in Colorado. That's part of the drive towards higher energy costs, is the fact that we're not producing. And in Colorado, we produce incredible energy. If we want clean air, clean land, clean water, then this is the place to produce it, not Venezuela, not Saudi Arabia.
I'm so glad that you at least are aware that they are hurting, because I talked to a few people, and I don't think a whole lot of people are thinking of that specific demographic, and it's just not fair. It really added to their already existing situation, the isolation with COVID and everything else, and not being able to even afford food.
Yep.
It's just not
bad right now. And I mean, so many people are hurting in Colorado. I just ask when people say, why are you running? Why should we vote differently? Well, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is your pocketbook better off? Are your streets safer? Are your kids doing better? Is your business doing better? I haven't run into anybody who said, yes, things are great. They're so much better than they were 4 years ago. So our current governor is running to have a second term to fix the problems that he created. And I say I'm a mom on a mission. I'm on a mission to save our state and get it headed back in the right direction so that our kids have a bright future.
Awesome. And I think you are a role model for a lot of us, and a lot of young ladies who someday would like to do what you are doing. So I'm sure a whole lot of other people are looking up to you and saying, someday I'm going to be here. So thank you for that too. I'm going to bring it back to maybe a couple questions that is slightly closer to my community, the Ethiopian community, the African community. And it has to do with cyberbullying. I think I've asked this question of everyone that I have interviewed, because it means a lot. When I say cyberbullying, it's in a different format. You are aware that there's been a conflict war the last 3 years in Ethiopia, in the Tigray region.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the war is over there, but when war happens over there, it impacts the community here. Um, we have faced the last couple years, 2, 3 years, backlash on when it comes to social media.
Mm-hmm.
People have gone as far as putting individuals' pictures on Facebook or social media, putting some nastiness there, which in my mind really is one, it's cyberbullying. We've raised this issue. And recently I've been bothered by how it is escalating to something else. There is a group that supports the TPLF, which happens to be the war with. People are facing what I consider to be a hate crime. I just recently got called a genocider just because I happen to be from Ethiopia. I faced it. Now I know what it feels like. Now I know how it really makes you feel like. I left without interacting with the individuals, but it really, really impacted me. Today, it is the name calling. Today, we're being called the genociders. For those that do not know the background history, I suggest and urge everyone to go and dig up just a little bit more of the fact before we jump on the bandwagon and kind of do some things with it. We are Ethiopians. We are peace-loving people, but here in the state, I am being called a genocider. Mm-hmm. Is that not considered a hate crime? Today is the name calling. What is tomorrow? What is this escalating to? And if I don't feel safe, I don't know if our kids be safe in the colleges and in the schools. And I know it has happened and it continues to happen. Mm-hmm. What do you think should be done to try and stop it?
Well, we live in a really divisive time right now, and social media and the internet is driving it. So I think one of the key things we can do, at least for our children, is get them off the screens, have them stay off the screens as much as possible, and build communication, build relationship, build community. I'm launching a program called Reconnect Colorado shortly after I'm elected that will encourage families and parents to keep kids offline and to get them out playing baseball and softball and basketball and spending time with their friends and their animals and making sure that we're not letting the evils of social media and online bullying happen. When it does happen, we should bring down the law. We should be able to prosecute if people are inciting violence or doing things to incentivize violence anywhere, anytime. I think that's totally inappropriate and not okay.
Right. Our kids are facing that. That's my concern. Yes. Children are being called that. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know where to begin and how to address it because it is inciting violence. Yeah. I know what it did to me. I know how I felt to be called something to that degree. In my mind, it really is inciting violence. They are instigating something and somebody would do or respond in some type of way, which will then create something else. And that's where my concern is. Where do you think the community should go to even address it?
Well, I think start with whoever's in charge of your school, if it's happening at school, or absolutely reach out to law enforcement. And I believe there are some other good organizations working on that front with volunteer attorneys and legal support if you need it. I can send you some links to that you can post with this. But there are good people working on this to try and address it, as it's a huge issue on all fronts.
Awesome. I would love to have those links so that I can put it up with this video. Thank you so very much. As much as the cyber does some incredible things that we don't necessarily like, and you just said, let's see if we can get our kids off the screens. But then on the screens lately, there is something that's trending. And that trend is about human trafficking. Mm-hmm. Young ladies are coming out there, parents are coming out there and saying that these are the signs that somebody has been stalking you. And if you find this or that other thing on your vehicle, you are not to, linger around because you've been targeted. And I don't know to what degree it's true, but it just feels like it might have some merit to it. But in general, about human trafficking, what do you think is the best course of action to protect?
Yeah, well, that ties back to drugs as well and crime. So we've got to make sure our public safety officials are funded, that law enforcement has the tools and resources to do their jobs. We've got to protect our border, our southern border of Colorado, to make sure that traffickers and drugs and human trafficking can't happen. Right now, I'm hearing from law enforcement and ICE agents it absolutely is. And they don't have the ability to stop it because of Jared Polis's decision to make us a sanctuary state. So that's very important that we undo that and untie their hands so that they can address this. We also need to educate the public about how dangerous it is. To your point, teaching young people how the signs and what to look for online and just as they're running their daily lives. This is a big, big issue that a lot of people don't talk about in the media or in politics, but it's happening right behind our doors. So we've got to make sure that we take it seriously and give law enforcement the tools that they need to address it.
Awesome. Our community is known for splitting our tickets in terms of the two parties. Okay. I know our community right now is sort of on a fence as to which way we want to go. We've been known to vote Democrat. We've been known to vote Republican. We do have value voters and affiliated, as well as people that have sided with one or the other, right? Take the rest of the few minutes that we have and tell us, why should the community vote for you?
Well, thank you. And I'm honored to be part of this conversation. I am just a kid from Monument who grew up in Colorado, who loves this state, who was able to go to college here and raise my family here, build a business here. And I'm so worried about the direction we're headed in right now. As we talked about, crime is out of control. It's so unaffordable to live here. Our kids aren't learning what they need to. And the current leader has decimated our energy industry here, which is really affecting our economy as well. And that's all just happened in the last 4 years. So now Jared Polis wants a second term to fix the problems that he created when he is the problem. And I want to be the solution. I say I'm a mom on a mission. I'm a doer. I'm a problem solver. I'm an outsider. I'm not a politician. I care deeply about our kids and our community. I want to get it back on track. I don't have other ambitions. I don't want to run for president like he does. I just want to fix Colorado so my kids and grandkids and our kids will have a bright future here. And I'm really worried that that's not happening right now. And I've got some very big, bold ideas about the future of Colorado. Would love for folks to go to the website and check them out, or follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms. We're even on TikTok, and having some fun there. We've got just a few weeks left in the election, and it's really important that everyone do their research and get involved, get engaged, and vote. Your ballots will be in your mailbox. And take your time. Make sure that you make the right decision, because it's a really important decision about the future of Colorado right now.
Thank you, Heidi. Get involved, get engaged, do your research, make sure you know how it is you're making that decision is an important message. The point that I would like to underline is get involved, get engaged, do your research, know which way you want to go. So thank you so much once again for your time. I know it's such a busy time, but thank you for taking a few minutes with me out of your busy day. I wish you all the best. We'll continue to have this kind of conversations in the next few weeks. We'll do the best that we can to also do our own research, our own engagement. And for anyone who might have any questions, you can reach out to us. Heidi for Colorado governor, she just said, they're all over the social media, and she's not kidding, they are. So any information that anybody would desire to have is available to them. Good luck, and thank you so much for taking time and speaking to really our community, because primarily this video will go out to our community and anyone who would like to know about your connection, your interaction, and the fact that you were just with us the other day. We're so grateful. We haven't seen this kind of engagement and willingness in the prior years. Things are changing. I'm so grateful and love that red power.
Thank you. You too. And check out the debates too. We've done 3 debates now and a couple town halls, and it's a really good way to see the differences between myself and the current governor and what we want to do for Colorado. And they're on our website too, which is heidiforgov.com. So HEIDIFORGOV.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.